So, good morning, everybody. Freedom Team, Tuesday morning, our weekly mastermind that we do. We got lots of big things going on here all the time. If you're a guest with us, welcome. You're always welcome. Same Zoom link, same time every week. And so, anyway, appreciate that. If you can, turn on your cameras. It always helps. The more you can participate and jump in with us, whatever, that's a good thing. Keith, thank you very much. Turn on your camera. Good to see you. Kathy, why don't you go ahead and take it? Introduce Donnie. Great to have Donnie here with us.
Yeah, Donnie, we're grateful to have you with us. So you guys are in for a treat today with Donnie. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of his background. He's actually been married for 28 years. He's a veteran. So thank you so much for that, Donnie. He's a former police officer. And then he has been, I'll let him talk about, his transition into EXP, but he's a 4-time mega icon agent with EXP. He was with Remax and he was number 36 in the world for Remax, and now he's 39 in the world for EXP. He has a 40-person traditional real estate team here at EXP. They did over $3 million in gross commissions last year, and he's a national real estate coach. So we have got the best of the best with us today. And I hope you got your pen and papers ready to take notes, because he's going to be talking. We're in this transition now with these new rulings that's coming down with our buyers, and in Tennessee we've always had to get buyer broker agreements, but that's not been the case all over. And so he's going to talk about world-class buyer consultations and how we work with our buyers. So Donnie, we are excited to have you, and again, grateful. I know you're super busy, not only, running your team, but being a national real estate coach and everything. So thank you so much for your time and pouring into the Freedom Team today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate that. So this presentation is world-class buyer client service, and it really did stem from the changes coming in the industry. I do a lunch and learn most months, and this is one that I did in April and got a lot of good response from it. So I thought it would be good to do for you all here as well. And it really just comes from the point of us treating our buyers in a way that would make them actually want to pay us a commission, right? Like, what's going to happen when things change in the industry and we do have to ask our buyers to pay us out of their pocket? And some of you may already be doing that. In our market, we normally do not have to do that. And there's even a question of how many of them can even afford to do that, or where they're going to come up with the money, because we are not in a cash-rich market here in Memphis, Tennessee. So I put this together and we'll go through it, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something from it. I think it'll be good if I could figure out how to share the right screen here. Let me see. All right, there you go. Can y'all see it?
Yep.
Now you can. All right, good deal. Okay, and I don't sugarcoat a whole lot. As she said, I am a veteran and a former Memphis police officer, so I don't generally sugarcoat a whole lot. So hopefully we don't hurt anybody's feelings, but I will be the first to tell you that there are a lot of us that need to work on this. And what I mean by that, and I'll cover some of this, is that most of us probably aren't doing an amazing, I don't know if I want to say, a lot of us probably aren't doing an amazing job in a way where buyers go, yeah, I would definitely pay that person to go represent me. Even as an investor, because I'm an investor as well, I will tell you, when I go out and agents bring me things, oftentimes I don't feel like they have my best interest in mind, or they're giving me amazing service. Oftentimes it just feels more like they want to sell a house for themselves so that they can get paid. So I'm very aware of this, not only as a coach, as a team leader, but also as a client as well. So that all of that kind of went into some of this. So number one, should you list to last, right? We've all heard it. Should we only do listings? And of course, all of us said, man, if this comes down, I'm just going to go do listings, right? And even as a team, we started training our team on listings about 8 months ago now, more heavily than we already were, in preparation for what was going to come down from NAR, even though we didn't know the result at that time. And we were the number one retail listing team in the city last year. We're actually up 50% year over year right now on listings taken. So absolutely, you want to go list some houses. And if you're worried about the NAR lawsuit, definitely go list some houses. However, that is not for every agent. There are some agents out there that just love working with buyers, or maybe their skill set is more wrapped around buyers. It is different. Selling listings is a business transaction. And some of us are more geared towards being lovey-dovey and showing the homes to our friends and building that relationship. And some of us are more geared towards the business transaction side. You know, sellers oftentimes are not as much fun as buyers. It is not unusual for you to get a seller and they say, hey, if I could get 250 for my house, I'd be happy. And then you show them the comps, you go, great news, I can get you 270. And then you get them 270 for it. And then what do you hear for the next 30 days? They're stealing my house from me, right? Sellers are not always that easy. Buyers tend to be much easier. They are much more excited about the transaction. It's typically less headache, right? Sellers almost just have a problem that you're solving for them. Not
Hey there,
always
girl. How
make
are you?
from doing buyers to just doing all sellers, for sure. It's definitely going to happen. There are some agents that I have seen that are awesome with their buyers, but they can't just flip the switch and say, hey, I'm just going to start doing a whole bunch of sellers now. That doesn't always happen. And also, most agents gain a lot of knowledge from working buyers that help them with their sellers. So if we have people coming to the market and just instantly get away from all buyers and try not to learn any buyers at all, I believe that's going to hurt a lot of their careers. I know here in my area, not that I know everyone's trajectory, but I only know 2 people who have come into the business and said, hey, I'm never going to work buyers. I'm just going to go out and immediately start with sellers. And they were successful at it. So, and one of them's on this call, or at least he was a minute ago. I can't see everybody right now. He started about 10 months ago, 8 months ago, and he went directly to sellers, and he's already listed and sold about 25 houses. He's doing an amazing job. He's also spending 4 or 5 hours a day on the phone prospecting for sellers. How many people are willing to do that if they want to make that transition directly to sellers, right? So there you go. So should you work with buyers? We already know things could be changing for buyers. To me, nothing is more fun in real estate than helping a friend buy a house. That's just it. As far as building a relationship and enjoying it, it is awesome to see them accomplish that and see the look on their face and how grateful they are. They tend to be easier to keep happy. Most of the time, they're getting a house that they love. They're excited about it. They're usually pretty happy. Many agents have the personality for buyers. It just goes really well. It's also easier for new agents to gain the knowledge of the market and how real estate works. I can remember when I first started training my first listing agents on my team, and we'd go into a house and somebody would say, well, we're looking over here at this neighborhood, maybe this house. And I could say things like, oh, that's this model home. The agent over there is this person. I have a great relationship with them. They're asking this price. We can get these extras. We can get this much closing costs covered for you. Blah, 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 right? And then we walk out the door and the listing agent's like, holy smokes, how did you do that? And I'm like, oh, because I've shown that house 18 times to my buyers. So that knowledge that I gained by going out and working with all those buyers helped me sign a lot more listings, because if people are selling a home and they're looking to buy a home, most of the time when you say something like, hey, what's important about your move? Guess what they talk about? What they want to buy. They don't normally talk about their selling of their home. Most of it, I had a listing appointment Friday. She spent the majority of her time talking about what she wanted to buy, not about the 2 houses that we were going to help her sell. That's just the way it works. And you need to have those skills with buyers, because those sellers are buyers as well. It's also easier to acquire leads, especially in a team setting, especially on paid lead sources. Some people believe in paying for leads, some don't. I've done very well paying for leads, as well as working other sources that aren't paid lead sources. And it is definitely easier in a team setting to be able to get those buyer leads. So if you're building a team, it is important to be able to get those buyer leads a lot of times. All right, so let's talk about what isn't world-class service and what some of us are doing right now: setting appointments and unlocking doors. Remember, especially what's coming down the pipe with the NAR lawsuit, they can call any listing agent, and that listing agent will probably go over there and unlock the door for them and let them in. That is not being a real estate agent. That's what most of the public think that we do now. That is not setting a high standard. Following a pre-written buyer questionnaire that you read off the paper. There's nothing wrong with buyer questionnaires to make sure you do a good job for your clients. The problem that we often have with them, though, is we as agents don't practice them 10,000 times, and therefore we're really not great with them. And how exciting is it for a buyer to go into your buyer consultation and you go, what area of town do you want to be in? How many bedrooms do you want? Right? Like there's not a lot of value there for them. Think about if you were buying a new Ferrari or something, right? Is that the way you want the salesman to be? Like, what size engine do you want? You got to have some personality. And I find that most agents don't put the time into running those presentations to truly give world-class service. Setting up a search in MLS. How many people want an automated search that probably half the houses coming over aren't even the houses that they were looking for, on top of all the junk email they already get, right? That's not world-class service. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's not world-class service. Being late. How many jokes are there about realtors never being on time? Not world-class service. Writing an offer. Anybody can fill in the blanks on a contract. Talking the buyer into something. This is probably the biggest one. Most of the time when I go look at a house, even as a broker, even some of my agents are kind of like, hey, look at this in this house, look that in that house. And it almost gives the feeling that they're trying to talk me into buying the home. And I'm telling you, if you're going through the house and trying to talk them into buying that house, you're making a mistake. You're not giving them world-class service. They probably knew whether or not they loved that house the first 30 seconds, no matter what you said. If they didn't love that house, they don't give a rip about the tankless water heater in the attic. It just doesn't matter to them. It's out of sight, out of mind. And there's no amount of telling them it has a tankless water heater and a new roof that is going to make them buy a house that they aren't already in love with. Okay. So what it does look like, over the top communication. And when I say over the top, I mean compared to what most of us are doing or what we're comfortable doing. I find that agents lose a whole bunch of business because they're scared to communicate at the level they need to communicate at. And I also find that a lot of my business, when I was working with buyers and sellers, with people saying things like, man, you're really good at what you're doing because you're always on top of it. Or, oh, you're really aggressive at bringing me things and communicating with me. And I love that. If they were selling a home in another state and buying a home here and I was their buyer's agent here, oftentimes I got things like, man, we love working with you so much more than that other agent because of how aggressive you are. I found that worked really well in my favor, my high D personality, because people want somebody who will be honest and upfront with them and be over the top of communication. If you go out and show them a house today and you don't call them back until Friday, they probably already got appointments to go see houses this weekend with somebody else. You did not give them world-class service. They felt like you forgot about them. Everybody wants to feel like we want their business. I can promise you that. I can remember when I bought my first new truck at like 22 or 23 years old, I went to a car lot at like 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, and they closed at 7 or 8 or something. And it was clear that the salesman just wanted to go home. And he made some comments about, hey, you know, car salesmen got to spend time with their kids too, blah, blah, blah. He made me feel like he didn't want my business at all. And even at 20 something, 22 years old or what have you. And guess what? I didn't buy a car there. How many of us are doing the same thing? How many of us, our clients, feel like this person really doesn't want my business? I will use someone else as a real estate agent. I guarantee it's happening. An extreme level of expertise. This is world-class service. That means the contract. Do you know the contract in and out? Can you explain all the forms to your client in a way that they feel comfortable moving forward? If they say, hey, how does earnest money work? Can you really explain it to them? Or do you just say, oh, don't worry, as long as, you know, we back out for inspection or something, you're gonna get your money back. Okay. A lot of that is the default of, hey, you're going to get it back, right? That's the default of how to sell people on it easy. But can you really explain to them how that works? You need to make sure you can do that. Can you explain the numbers to them? Can you explain how inspection works? What are their options after the inspection? What are their options if the repairs aren't done when you do the final walkthrough? All those things really go into really being an expert and having a high level of expertise in that. The inventory in the market, being able to explain to them, hey, this is why we have this amount of inventory. This is what's going to happen if we wait and don't make a decision. Lending, you don't have to know all the lending questions. You can definitely always refer back to your lender, and don't be scared to do that. But you should probably, in general, have an idea of what the loans look like, what kind of loans they're getting, what you can do with that loan. If they're looking at a bunch of foreclosures that all have rotted wood and the roof is falling off of them, they probably can't buy those with an FHA loan. And you need to know that up front and be able to explain to them how that works. Market knowledge. Are prices going up or going down? Is inventory stagnant? Is inventory increasing? What is the absorption rate? Is this the best house that they're going to find on the market for their value? What areas can they go to be in a gated community? All of that kind of stuff. Where are the 55 and over communities at? all that kind of stuff that you need to be able to work on. And then finding deals, making sure that you can find what they're looking for. This is a big one. Are you able to expand their searches if what they're looking for they're not able to find? Because I will tell you this, without a doubt, the time frame will vary, but if you can't find them the house they want, there is only a limited amount of time until they start thinking it's your fault, not the market's fault. You can only say so many times that, hey, there's just nothing available that fits your needs in the market. It may be one day, it may be 1 month, it may be 6 months, but ultimately they're going to go, well, if Donnie can't get it done, I'm going to go to Jeff because he may be able to get it done. Okay, so keep that in mind. As you're being able to explain the contract and explain these things, can you do it in a way that makes them feel comfortable about them feeling like you're being pushy? Do you do manual searches or do you only rely on auto searches? Okay, manual searches need to be done in addition to your auto searches. By all means, use technology, but I think we're way over reliant on technology. We're not doing manual searches, and we're also not explaining some of those searches to you. I teach every one of my agents when they come on board, probably 25% or more of every house that is listed in our MLS that has a garage is listed incorrectly here in Memphis, Tennessee. And if you do an auto search and you search for 2-car attached garage, you're probably missing about 25% of the inventory that has a 2-car attached garage because it wasn't entered correctly in the MLS. If you're doing that and you're never doing manual searches on top of it, then your client, in what is already a reasonably low inventory market, your client is missing out on 25% of that inventory. That definitely could be costing you a sale. And then what happens when the next agent that they reached off of Zillow sends them the houses you didn't send them, right? So keep that in mind. Can you expand your search to find more options? Are you able to think about where they want to be and say, hey, you know what? I know you want to be within 5 miles of that location because that's where you work. But if the perfect house came up and it was 5.5 miles away, you'd at least want me to send it to you so you could take a look at it, right? Okay, being able to do that versus going, oh, they wanted to be in 5 miles of this. I set it up on auto search. I don't ever have to worry about it again. That is not world-class service. That is trying to make it efficient for you and make it as easy for you as possible. What if they don't want anything upstairs, but you live in an area with a lot of new construction where almost everything is built with it upstairs? Well, what are the options? Hey, you know what, Kathy? I know you don't want anything upstairs. We've looked at every option that is, and I'm going to keep looking for more options for you that don't have anything upstairs. But if something was the perfect house downstairs and it just happened to have a bonus room upstairs, but that's all that was up there, you'd still want to see that, wouldn't you? I wouldn't want you to miss out on a perfect house just because there's a bonus room. And that's just a couple examples, and you've got to be able to go through those examples and actually expand those searches to help people find what they're looking for versus saying, oh, 1 level, 2-car attached garage within 5 miles of this place, and then they're only getting 50% of the inventory that they should be getting, and then somebody else is sending them the inventory that didn't set up that search that fits their needs or maybe doesn't quite fit exactly what they said, but it still works for them. And then they end up buying from someone else. And you're like, I can't believe that person did that to me. Well, they did it to you because you didn't show them half of the inventory on the market. Think about those kind of things. That is not world-class service, right? Where can they get the best deal on new construction? Some of our best deals in our market are new construction, okay? Not to advertise D.R. Horton, but D.R. Horton is still offering our people 5.5% interest rate and giving them bonuses. I won't say that, oh, and giving us bonuses too, by the way. I won't say that that's the best deal around for everybody, but if they want new construction and they're really struggling to be able to afford what they want at 7.5% interest, but they can afford it at 5.5% interest, you need to know where they can go to get that, because on a $400,000 house, 2% interest is pretty significant, right? That's $8,000 a year. So that is what, $500 a month on a payment on a $400,000 house or a $400,000 loan. I'm doing the math in my head, so I hope that's accurate. But that's pretty significant to be able to put them in a $400,000 house in new construction versus a $300,000 house that needs work. Okay, so just as an example there to think about that, and they get to pick their options and get what they want. A lot of times stuff like that works. So you want to know where the new construction is in your market. What about vendors? Do you have vendors that will help you on a Saturday night? If you've been out showing them houses all day and they're ready to write an offer, but they have a question about the mortgage, will your lender answer the phone? That's part of our world-class service to our clients. If you've been out showing houses all day on a Sunday, but there's something there for whatever reason, there's a question about title, isn't it good for your title company to be able to call you back? And I can say, hey, Kathy, we had that question. You know what? I do a lot of business. When I call, the title companies call me back. I spoke to my title guy, and here's your answer. Now, did you still want to write that offer at 400, or do you think 405 was going to be better? Right? Like, that's the kind of way that you can help them to make a decision on the spot before the houses get sold out from under them. Of course, there's lots of other things to think about, but think about those kind of things of what real world-class service actually looks like. All right. So talk about the buyer consultation real quick. What it should do, it should get you hired, and it should help you do a great job for your client. So the first thing it should do is explain why the buyer needs you and explain the steps of the buying process. So oftentimes what we think of as a buyer consultation is the example I gave earlier of reading off of a list as to what the buyer wants. When I do my buyer consultation, we have a 10-step home buyers assistance program that our team utilizes or has available to them to utilize. And it doesn't worry about what the buyer wants in that at the beginning of our buyer consultation. What it does is talks about the buying process and what our 10-step buying process is and why they need us. So before we ever get into what kind of home do you want, that kind of stuff, we're talking about why they need us, why they need a system, how we can help them to have a good transaction and get them into a home that they want, and how we're going to bring them good service. We talk about things like being a one-stop shop for their mortgage so that we can get them the best mortgage rate and so that they know their correct budget. We talk about things like agency. You know what number one on our buyer presentation is? Agency. It's pretty simple. Hey, everybody that has hired a professional real estate agent and they have their sign in that front yard, they have hired a professional to look out for them and their best interest in the transaction. Doesn't it make sense that you have a professional looking out for your best interest as well? Do you have any questions about how that works? That's going to become really, really important over the next 6 months. Okay, that's step one in our buyer consultation right there. I've been doing it that way since I got a license. Keep that in mind. So your buyer consultation is not reading questions off of the sheet. So then you got to find out what the client has in mind and guiding them to find the right houses. The second step is your buyer consultation sheet that so many of us think of, that is, where do you want to be, right? Like, what are your top 5 things? How many bedrooms you want? How many bathrooms? How big of a lot? How big of a house? Upstairs, downstairs, et cetera, et cetera. And then here's a really big one. Notice I put guide them to find the right houses. You need to be able to advise them as you go. This is where you need to have really, really good market knowledge so that when they're looking for certain types of houses that are certain sizes, built certain years, near certain schools, in certain school districts, you need to be able to have some guidance to be able to have an educated conversation with them about the areas that might interest them. You can also take notes for yourself separately that, oh, they said this, and this might be something that we need to look at. That way, after you go through that, you can go back and talk about the different things that they're looking for so that they know that you're the expert that can guide them to the right decision. Okay. So that's number one, getting through that buyer consultation, getting hired, and hopefully giving them a level of service where they will agree to pay us, right? Like, that's going to be the really big important thing over the next few months. All right. First showing. You do not need to show all the features of the home. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't teach my agents to go through the house, and we sell few hundred buyers' houses every year, more than anybody else in our city. I don't teach them to go through the house and show everything about the house, right? You don't have to say, oh, look, the primary bedroom's got a door on it. Hopefully, 99% of the houses in your area already have that. The buyer can see that. They're already aware of those things. Okay. You also should not be tearing the home apart, be judgmental, or doing an inspection. We probably have all dealt with agents like this that think they're inspecting the house. Here's the deal. My first FSBO I ever sold, and I built my business calling expireds and FSBOs. The first FSBO I ever sold, I could stand in the front yard and I could see the backyard through the house. I don't mean from the side. I mean through the house. And it was like $30,000. And I am certain that I lost money along the way selling that home. It wasn't my job to inspect it because that is outside of my scope of expertise, especially at that time when I was like a brand new agent. It is the inspector's job to inspect it. Is my job to guide them on hiring the right inspector, or at least giving them options for the inspector and what they should expect during that inspection. Okay, that's my job, not to tear the house apart. Because here's the deal: you don't know what that person is used to, right? Like I wouldn't have bought that particular house, or I wouldn't necessarily want my kids to buy that particular house, but the people who bought it, they loved it enough to buy it, right? And they have since fixed it up and did their thing with it and made it their own. I definitely would not have wanted to tear it apart if that were the case, okay? So if you walk up to a house and there's a couple missing shingles, I will tell you, it never hurts to point that out to the buyer, because then they're going to know that you're being honest with them. I got a lot of buyer reps signed because people said, I'm signing your buyer rep because you pointed that rotted wood out to me, or you pointed those shingles out, and I know you're being honest and not just trying to sell me everything. Here's the key though, the way I said it and how I did it. Hey, Kathy, there's a couple missing shingles here. We've had a ton of storms recently. I'm not a roofing expert. We just need to make a note. And if you do fall in love with this house, make sure the inspector checks it when he comes out. And then guess what I do? I make a note on that house. And when the inspector comes out beforehand, I'm going to remind my buyer, hey, remember we needed to have the inspector take a look at the roof. And then when I get there, hey, it was important to Kathy that you take a look at the roof because there was a couple missing shingles. I've done my job. I've disclosed to the buyer what I saw, and I have helped them remedy that problem and make an educated decision based on the person whose expertise it is to help them make that decision. And that's the inspector, not me. Okay. What you should be doing on that first showing is building rapport. And the easiest way I noted, I teach my agents to build rapport is the Ford method. Hopefully a lot of you have heard about it, but if you haven't, it's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And finding out more about what they will buy and what they're looking for. As I'm going through the home, my number one goal is to build rapport. They can see whether or not they like the house. I already talked about this. If they love it, there isn't much that I can do to talk them out of it. If they don't love it, there isn't much I can do to talk them into it, okay? I already told you what I do if there is something that I see that maybe is a little bit wrong. Now, what do I do if I see something that is really nice that I'm like, oh, they want to granite in the bathroom. I really need to point that out. I'll point it out. But in general, I only point out things that they have told me they're looking for. So if they say that, hey, we want granite in all our bathrooms, we just think that's the prettiest thing in the world, then I might say, oh, this one's got the granite in the bathroom like you wanted. But I'm pointing out that it's something they told me about already. That way, I'm not just telling them random features of the house and them in their head. They're going, I can see that, Donnie. I can see there's a door in the bedrooms, right? Like, why are you pointing that out? You're just trying to talk me into something. So I'm not pointing out random stuff to them, number one, and then rolling their eyes at me. Number two, I'm showing them that I'm listening to them and paying attention to what they're looking for. By pointing out the things that they already told me that were important to them, they know that I'm looking out for their best interest and I'm listening to what they told me. It goes much, much further than you pointing out random stuff that they really don't care that much about, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. The Ford method, as I go into one or two rooms, we talk about family, right? They might have the ugliest kids in the world, but I'm going to be like, these kids are so cute. Where do they go to school at? How old are they? Whatever the case might be, okay? And we might do that for one or two rooms. And then we might go to the next room, like, so where do you work? Oh, that's awesome. My uncle used to work there, blah, 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 whatever the case is. And then the other spouse, do you work outside the home as well? Blah, 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 right? That's a few rooms through the house. Recreation, especially I'm a car guy. So if they drive cars, by all means, or they drove up in some kind of nice car, by all means, when it gets to recreation, I'm probably going to start talking about the car. That's just where I'm going to go because it's very natural for me. For most men, it's sports, right? Like most men in our city, you can talk to them about just about any sport and get along great with them. This is a big challenge for me. The only sport I watch is UFC. I don't watch football. I don't watch basketball. I'll go to a Nashville Predators game if I'm in town. I enjoy that, but I'm not watching it on TV. I don't follow sports other than UFC. So that's usually a little bit more of a challenge for me. So I have to look for something else. Dreams, especially if they're buying land, works really, really well. But certainly you can always go down the road of dreams of, hey, what's important to you all being in this area? Oh, you want your kid to go to that high school. That's pretty cool. Well, what's important about that high school? Oh, so they've got a great football program. They're very good. So I assume he's talented in football. Yeah, very cool. So where's he wanting to go to college? Is he wanting to play ball in college? Yeah. Oh, you want him to go to NFL? Guess what I just learned? It's not the house. They're not buying the house. They're buying their kid a ticket to the NFL. That's their dream, right? Like that's what we need to be focused on is how do we accomplish that? So, and what else I know about that If it is a certain time of the year in particular, they're pretty motivated, right? Like if it's June or July and they need to get their kid into a certain school program, they're motivated. I have sold my friends' houses because their kids were amazing wrestlers. And there's a certain school that had an awesome wrestling program. And guess what? Both of those kids are now in college on wrestling scholarships. So that was awesome, right? Like that's the great thing about helping buyers accomplish their goals. Also, as you're going through that, you're finding out more about what your client will buy. And the reason why that's important now is because remember, we talked about those auto searches and we talked about manual searches. You need to be taking notes and going back and adjusting what you're sending to your client. You always need to be focusing in on this is what they need, this is what they're looking for, that kind of stuff, and adjusting those searches on your manual and your auto searches for sure. Okay. And make sure you're looking at all. Did my slideshow? Okay, there we go. Just froze up for a second. All right. After the first showing, decide if they're interested in the home. Do not try to sell them a house that they're not interested in. If they ran through it in 3 minutes and they said ew all the way through, don't try to sell them that house. A much better response is, hey, it doesn't seem like this is the one that you're interested in. Is that correct? Just ask, right? What I will tell you is most of the time, after you have sold 10 or 20 or 30 houses, I sold 42 buyers my first calendar or my first full-time calendar year in real estate. After I sold those 42 buyers, I knew 99% of the time whether or not a buyer wanted to buy a house after we showed it. Kathy, I'm sure you've been doing this a long time. Seldomly does Kathy show a buyer a house and she walks out the front door and she doesn't know whether or not they have interest in that home. She knows they're either interested and they're not. If they are interested, what do? Talk to them about the house. What are the offers you want to make? Are there any changes that need to be made? What are their dreams for that house? What are their thoughts? That kind of stuff. If they're not interested in that house, don't sell them on that house. Don't try to talk them into it. Instead, there's a couple of things you can do to try to find houses that they will like next time. One method I like, if they see more than one home, especially if you're showing them 5 that day or whatever the case might be, when you go in the first house, you go in the second house. When you come out of the second house, hey, Kathy, if these were the last 2 houses on planet Earth, which one would you buy? If she says number 2, number 1's going in the trash. We're not even worried about number 1 anymore because if she doesn't buy number 2, she's definitely not buying number 1. And when we go to the third house and we walk out the door, hey, Kathy, you said that number 2 was the house you would buy before. Between number 2 and number 3, if they were the last 2 houses on earth, which one would you buy? So at the end of the day, I now know which house she said she would buy, and I know the 4 that she wouldn't buy. Okay. And if I have to, I can even ask. Now, Kathy, all day you said that number 3 was your favorite, but you're still not interested in making an offer. So I'm curious, what would need to change about number 3 so that you would be ready to make an offer today? Right? And then I shut up and let her talk so that I can find out what she's looking for, what she liked about number 3, and what would need to be better on number 3 so that the next time we can find her a house that she looks for. My average buyer looked at 6 houses before they made an offer. Now, of course, if we didn't win the offer or if it fell through or something, that process started all over. And I had some that looked at 1 and some that looked at 30, but the average was 6. And the reason why is because I asked those kind of questions and I did manual searches to try to send them things they look for. I would much rather sit at home, not spend any money, and spend an extra 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week doing a manual search than I ever would doing an auto search and having to drive around and show them 30 or 40 houses instead of showing them 6. Think about, realtors are always worried about their efficiencies and how they can do things the easiest way and how they make more money for less work. Well, there's a huge clue right there. Find out what you're looking for and do manual searches instead of driving all over town and showing them stuff that they don't want. The other thing that you can do when you show them houses is, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like we shouldn't even driven down the street, and 2 being that if you don't get this house tomorrow, you're going to cry, how would you rate this house? If they rate it a 7 or below, it's not the house for them most of the time. Perfect. So you rated this house a 7. I've done this a whole bunch, and I know from my experience that a 7 is probably not the house you're going to be happy with 6 or 12 months from now. And that's really important to me. What would need to change about this house to make it a 9 or a 10 so that you would be happy in it 6 months from now? And they're going to tell you what they're looking for. And then you got to go back and do those searches and make those adjustments, right? So there you go. So that's how you can find out whether or not they're interested, how they're not interested, and what they're looking for. If you can't tell, like I can't tell whether they're interested, Donnie, I don't know if they are or if they're not, blah, blah, blah. It's a real complex script. Hey, Kathy, what are you thinking? That's what I say, right? Like if I can't tell whether or not it's a house they like when I come out of the house, what do you think? And they will tell you because they want you to be concerned about their thoughts. They want you to be concerned about what they're looking for. They want you to show them that you care about their business and that you care about what they're looking for. Okay. All right. Also, when I come out of that first showing, that's my time when I make sure I do not have an agent. I know some of you are going to see these next two items and you're going to be like, oh, you didn't make sure before the, no, I give them one for free. I'm like a drug dealer. They get one for free. Okay. Because think about this, trying to get them pre-approved, especially internet leads, that kind of stuff. Now, if you work all SOI, that's probably different, right? But an internet lead comes in, especially on a team setting, it's quite likely that they saw the team leader's name. And then they saw the team leader's name. We'll say Kathy's on my team, just for an example. They saw Donnie Morrow. She answers the phone and says, this is Kathy. Oh, well, this isn't Donnie. No, this is Kathy. So number one, they didn't get the person that they thought they were going to get on the phone to begin with, right? Number two, they don't know Donnie Morrow or Kathy from the man on the moon. And then number three, she's going to send them to a lender that they don't know from the man on the moon. And that lender is going to ask for their address, phone number, social security number. So three people that they don't know, that they've only talked to on the phone for 5 minutes. And now you want them to give them all their personal information. And then I'm just going to be honest about it. There's a good chance that the lender didn't do an amazing job when they called and spoke to them either. So there's always a chance that that lender didn't make them feel overly comfortable. So that's why I give them one for free. By all means, run your business the way you want to. I'm telling you, you're going to lose some business if you don't give them one for free. How do I make sure they don't have an agent? I don't ask, do you have an agent? Okay. What I do say is, do you have anyone sending you great deals or have you just been looking online? And by doing that, I'm going to find out if they have an agent, because if they say, oh, I've just been looking online, how's that going for you? Dig into it, find their pain point. What is their pain point of looking online, especially a few years ago, right? Well, we've seen a lot of them, but they're all sold before we even see them. Yeah, you know why? Because my clients bought them before you saw them. That's why you need me to help you. That's a big value, especially back in 2020, 2021. That was huge to be able to do that. The same thing with a lender. I don't ask, are they pre-approved? That's not what I do. That is a salesman term, and it is self-serving to us. And it sounds like we just care about ourselves. It's always, are you going to be paying cash or will you be using financing? Because now they feel, oh, you think I can pay cash? Oh, wow, that's cool, right? You're building them up instead of beating them down and making it sound like you don't think they can qualify to buy a house. Especially in a city like mine, where only 26% of the people who call us at any given time qualify to buy a house that day. So think about that. If we do that, 3 out of 4 of the people we talk to, we're almost putting them down because we're saying they can't get pre-approved, right? Now, does that mean we have to go out and show a lot of people houses to give them that one for free? It does, but I'd rather go out and show 3 people houses to make 2 sales than to show 1 person 1 house to make 1 sale. So, because it's 50% more income, even though I wasted my time on the 3rd person. So after that first showing, you're finding out if they have an agent, you're getting them to a lender. If they, well, whether they're pre-approved or not, you probably have a preferred lender that you want to get them to regardless. And then this is a big one, set the next appointment. So Kathy, I know this one wasn't the one for you today, but I've got a really good idea now of what you're looking for. I'm going to go back and find houses to send to you that match all your criteria now that I know what it is. Today's Tuesday. Are you available Thursday at 4 for us to go look at homes again? Why do I do that now? Because she's committed to me now. Even if she doesn't sign a buyer rep, and by the way, coming soon, it's going to be really easy to go, and oh, by the way, we need a buyer rep to do that, Kathy. That's going to be awesome. Okay. But right now I know it's a little bit harder because probably everybody in your market doesn't do it. So therefore they kind of look at you like you have 3 heads when you ask them to sign a buyer rep. It is what it is, but that's one of the great things that's probably going to come out of the changes. If everybody's getting buyer rep signed every time, it's going to be so much easier for you to get it signed. Just like right now, think about it. Every listing agent gets a listing agreement signed every time. So therefore, very few people ever balk at signing a listing agreement because that's just the way it works. But you try to get buyer reps, and it's one of the most difficult forms to get signed oftentimes outside of your sphere of influence. And I hear this over and over from agents. And the reason why is because every agent's not doing it. So once every agent has to do it, it's just going to become the way business is done. I like certain states. I don't remember which ones there are, but there are certain states that have a working with a real estate agent form. Some of you may even be on here that has to be signed at like the first substantive contact or something other. Anyway, they're required to do it. So I think it's much, much easier to get the form signed when everybody is doing it. All right, so set the next appointment, and then you're going to go back and find houses to show them at that next appointment that match their criteria. So think about this. Kathy could come in on Monday. I could meet her on Tuesday, get her pre-approved, make sure she doesn't have a lender, get a buyer rep sign, know the criteria for the houses she's looking for, and know she's not working with another agent, and then go back on Thursday, show her houses she actually wants to look for in her budget because she's now pre-approved with my preferred lender, and there's a good chance on Thursday I can find her a house. Because remember, my average client looked at 6 houses. So if they came in on Monday, I showed them 1 house on Tuesday, and I show them 5 on Thursday, there's a good chance on average they're going to be on the contract on Thursday, or we're writing an offer Thursday. How many of your businesses would change if you were able to offer that kind of world-class service, that you could meet people and 4 days later get them under contract? Now, that's a perfect example, right? Obviously, sometimes on Thursday, you're only going to show them 3, and then you got to go back on Saturday and show them 3 more. But even then, guess what? If I got the lead on Monday, I met them on Tuesday, showed them 1. Thursday, I showed them 3. Saturday, I showed them 3 more. Boom, under contract. That makes for a pretty quick career, because when you can get 1 under contract in a week and you can work more than 1 client at a time, all of a sudden now you can start selling multiple buyers in a week, whereas people think, oh, buyers take so much time. But if you do it right, you can offer really great service, get referrals from those buyers, and do it in a way that your business is efficient as well. All right, let's talk about communication before and after the appointment. Everybody should go in your CRM. And I know it's basic, but agents still resist putting people in your CRM. They still resist putting notes in there. They still resist setting reminders. You don't know how much business you're losing if you're not using your CRM and putting everybody in there and setting your reminders. And if you think you're not losing any, you're either mistaken or you're not talking to enough people. There's just no way around it. If you're talking to the amount of people that you need to sell houses at a high level, now if your goal is 5 a year, cool, it's all good. But if your goal is to sell 20, 30, 40 houses a year or more, you're not going to be able to keep up with everybody you're talking to. It's just not going to happen, okay? I put them in the CRM ahead of time, and they're always going to have a reminder in my CRM for the day after the show, no matter what. I see agents do this all the time. They get a lead on Wednesday. They go out and show a house. The client would have used them. The client liked them. The client was serious. The client would have gotten pre-approved. They would have done all these things. The agent doesn't set a reminder, or they're scared of being pushy. They set it for a week out. And then next Thursday, they're like, oh, I got to call Kathy back. And they call Kathy back. Oh, well, I really enjoyed working with you, but I didn't hear from you, and I bought from Donnie on Monday. It happens all the time, way more than most of us want to admit. The way you solve that problem is you always set a reminder for the day after the showing in your CRM prior to showing them the house. That way, the next morning when I send Kathy those houses, based on the information that I learned the day before at the showing and by asking my questions and building rapport with her, now I can reach out. Hey, I just sent you over the houses that match the criteria that we talked about. I want to make sure that you receive them. And if you would, look through them as quickly as you can and let me know so that I can get our appointment set for our showings for tomorrow for that 4 o'clock appointment that we already set. So now I'm not jumping through hoops at the last minute on Thursday trying to set appointments. I may have to make a change or something, but for the most part, I got the lead on Monday, showed her house on Tuesday, got her pre-approved on Tuesday and Wednesday. I know what she's looking for, sent her houses that actually match her criteria on Wednesday. And now she's telling me which ones she wants to go see, hopefully before Thursday, so that I have plenty of time to set all the appointments, get everything worked out so that it makes sense. I can prepare for the appointment. That's going to be a much, much smoother process than if I just wing it and go show her a house and then wait a week to call her back. Right? Like there's just no comparison in how those processes are going to work. So always call the day after showing. And if they don't like it and you don't have anything to show them, or maybe you set that appointment because some of you probably like, What if I set that appointment and I can't find them anything to show? You know, as a side note, if there's anything in chat or anything, I will answer questions at the end because I don't want to stop in the middle to answer questions or anything. So I'm not even looking at chat, just so y'all know. I'm not ignoring it. Well, I kind of am, but on purpose. Okay, so just because I know that it gets really hard to get through any presentation if you stop every 3 seconds. All right, so make sure you're reaching out the day after that showing. Make sure you're sending them homes that match your criteria that you learned about, and they need to know that you're working for them several times a week. If you do go back, and I'm like, man, I can't find anything that meets Kathy's criteria, like this lady, champagne budget on, or champagne taste on a beer budget, right? Like I can't find anything. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep our appointment for Thursday. I'm going to call her and say, hey, Kathy, I've been looking really hard. I'm hoping something will hit the market so I can still show it free tomorrow. But we already had time set aside. Can you meet me at Starbucks tomorrow at 4 if we don't find anything so that we can go through all the inventory together on the MLS? Now she knows I'm not hiding anything from her. Remember at the beginning, I talked about how there's only a matter of time, and at some point, they're going to think it's you. At some point, they're not going to blame it on the market. Well, what's the best way for me to fight that? The best way for me to fight that is to get in front of her with the MLS and show her everything that is available and let her tell me no to all of it. And that way she knows I'm looking for everything. Or maybe there's a couple in there that she thought were no's, and I could be like, I know you said that's a no because it's got a bonus room upstairs, but the rest of it checks all your boxes. Let's at least go take a look at it. I'm more than happy to show it to you. I don't care if you look at one house or 50. I just want you to find the right house for you. And I don't want this one to sell out from under us about us giving it a chance. She's definitely going to think that I'm doing much more to find her the right house at that time than if I just keep sending her stuff and not finding her anything. So keep that appointment and go meet them and go through the MLS together. Bring them to your office. If you have one, put them on the big screen, right? If you've got that ability, go to Starbucks, meet them there. If you only find one house, meet at that one house, and then maybe you go outside and sit in the car and pull it up on your laptop at the car. But some way, make it work out so that they know you're working for them, and you need to be reaching out to them several times a week. Okay, if they are a qualified A-list buyer, do not go a week without them hearing from you. Even if it's as simple as a text sometimes, right? Hey, Kathy, I'm checking every day. I haven't seen anything to send you the last couple of days, but as soon as I find something, you'll definitely hear from me. Is there anything you need from me I'm not aware of? Okay. I had a couple little phrases that I used a lot, so I didn't have to say the same thing to people when I check back. One was, is there anything you need of me that I'm not aware of? I always use that. Two is, hey, Kathy, I want to make sure I give you great customer service. Is there anything you need today? Simple enough, right? Hey, Kathy, are there any changes that we need to make on our search from your criteria? Okay, have a few phrases, things like that that you can use so that you can reach out to her 2 or 3 times a week so that she knows you are working for her without it sounding like you're just calling and saying, hurry up and buy every time. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, be aware of overusing technology. I've already kind of talked about that quite a bit. It is limited. I've already talked about manual searches. I won't beat that up anymore. Talk about this. Talking to your client, seeing how they're feeling, what they're looking for, what adjustments need to be made, that kind of stuff. By the way, they're doing manual searches all day, every day. I don't know how many millions of dollars companies in America lose while their clients are looking at houses when they're looking to buy, when they're on the clock. But I bet you it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars of productivity costs that we lose. That's why when clients walk in a house, they usually know the value of that house better than you because they're looking in one neighborhood at one size house with one certain price range, with one certain square footage and number of bedrooms. You need to know what they're feeling. You need to be talking to them about what they're looking for, what they're finding. Hey, I didn't see anything today when I searched. Did you happen to see anything? That way they know it's okay for them to send you stuff, because if you don't do that, they might click on it on Zillow or Realtor.com and they might go to a different agent instead of to you after you put in all that work. Okay, after your second, third showings, etc., it really is rinse and repeat at a high level. You're always calling the day after the appointment, making sure you're taking care of them. You're always looking to make necessary adjustments in their plans and yours, where they need to be, what they need to look for, what the budget is, whatever the case might be. I already talked about how my buyer looked at an average of about 6 houses. Don't get set on that number. I think buyers are looking at a few more in today's market. I also know that I had some buyers that looked at 20 or 30. It wasn't everybody was 6. That was the average. And this is a big one here. Try to always take extreme ownership. Try not to ever blame the buyer. I know we hear buyers are liars, all that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, those buyers are human and they are the same as everybody else. Try your best not to blame it on them. I know some of them, like I said earlier, have a champagne taste on a beer budget or whatever the case might be. It's our job to solve their problem, whatever their problem is, whether it's the budget, whether it's the area, whether it's the fact that the husband and wife can't agree, whatever the case might be. We are problem solvers. And the better we are, the more people's problems we can solve over the next couple years, the better off we're going to be here. All right. I'm getting a little tight on time, so I'm going to try to finish up real quick here. Negotiations. You should be able to go into negotiations with a win-win outcome or planning on a win-win outcome. So make sure when you are negotiating your contract, your client understands it and you know how far they want you to push. The trick is always making sure your client knows you're willing to push as far as you want them to, and at the same time knowing that you're still on their side. Okay. Personal items. I try to stay out of personal item negotiations. And I think this is a big part of giving world-class service, because you'd be surprised where you might do an amazing job for somebody all the way through the transaction, and then they get upset with you over $100 coffee table. I try not to do it. I see people lose deals over $100 coffee table because people argue more over that coffee table than they did over the $500,000 house. Anytime I have a personal item or something comes up, or a buyer agent calls me and I've got the listing and says, hey, my buyer would like to buy that treadmill, whatever the case might be, my answer is always, I'm going to go to my seller. I'm going to find out their price. It is non-negotiable. I'm going to tell you the price. Your buyer's going to say yes or no. You and I aren't going back and forth for 2 weeks and making everybody mad at each other over this treadmill. Okay. And I get the price from my seller. Hey, Kathy, how much do you want to sell it for? Perfect. I'll see whether or not they say yes or no. And then I go back to the other agent. She wants $500. Is your buyer a yes or a no? And be done with it. I'm telling you, it kills deals and it ruins good reviews and it ruins referrals for you. Okay. Inspections. The biggest thing about inspections, they are the #1 reason for fall through. We track all of our fall through. Our market has a 30% fall through rate here across. That's from the title company. That's across all realtors, about a 30% fall through, which is insane for realtors. We track ours at our team. Inspections is more than 50%, meaning it is more by itself than every other fall through reason combined. It's all inspections. And the biggest thing you can do is control expectations on both sides. Sellers need to know that we're no longer in 2020 and they don't have 10 offers and they're probably going to have to do some repairs. And buyers need to know that it is not a new house. It is not made to be brought up to code. If you're the buyer's agent and you're putting a bunch of stuff in there to bring it up to code, and then the seller says no, well, you just killed your deal because you brought a bunch of stuff up in there instead of going by the contract. Unless your state, obviously your contract calls for stuff being brought up to code. Our state specifically states it is not for that purpose. So be aware of that. I'm going to stop right there just because of the sake of time, and there's probably a couple questions. Hopefully that was, I didn't go too fast and it was helpful.
That was great. That was a lot of good information, for sure. And Donnie, if you could share your PowerPoint with me, I would love that. We'll attach it to the recording of this. And Christy, so we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Christy has had her hand raised for a minute. Christy, did you have a question?
Christy.
You there?
You're muted if you're talking, Christy.
Hey, I'm sorry. I must have raised an accident. We're cleaning up after tornado damage, and I'm just listening while I work.
Oh,
So sorry.
All right. All right.
no worries. No worries.
Yeah, no worries at all. So I do want to make sure we cover any questions if anybody has any specific questions for Donnie. I think there was a couple of questions. I think Kimberly asked one, but she had to run. So I think there was one other one.
So Jennifer brought up a couple of times, she asked about the good things to say besides checking in. And then I went through a couple and she said she missed a couple. So just checking in is always easy. Hey, I wanted to see if there's anything we needed to adjust. Hey, I want to make sure I've given you good service. Hey, is there anything that I need to work on that I'm not aware of? Like anything around that just to get their thoughts going so that you're not seeing the same things. And certainly the 3 or 4 that I use may not be the 3 or 4 for you, but come up with 3 or 4 around those things that are just vague questions to get people to talk. Just think in terms of you want open-ended question. One of the reasons cops make good real estate agents, because we understand the difference between open-ended and closed-end questions. So whatever your questions are, when you make yourself a list of 3 or 4 or 5 of those follow-up questions, just make sure they're open-ended questions. Your goal is not for you to talk and educate them on what you found that much. Your goal is to get them to talk at least 75% of the time.
That's good. You know, one of the things that you said, well, a lot of what you said, but one of them that I really think is so critical, especially with this transition time right now, is as agents, we can't just put people on auto searches and expect them to call, right? You know, it's especially if you don't have a relationship with them, you've got to do the manual search. Many times what I do is I'll have an auto search set up to come to me, and then I filter through, and then I'll pick out which ones, you know, to send to the client. Because if you're just auto searching, like you said right off the bat, a lot of times they're getting jumped, and then they're like, she's not even listening to what I'm saying. And what I also didn't know, 25 years of doing this, because I've never tracked it, but when you said 25%, you know, like garages in your area are incorrect. So if you've got them on a 2-car search, you know, garage, we need to make sure that we're looking back for those missed, you know, whether it's 10, 15, 20, 25%, like you said, that's a lot of houses that are falling through the cracks because we've got them on auto search it. So I thought those were great, along with so much other you said. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great stuff. And one of the things that got me thinking too, Donnie, like, my wife, Lane, I mean, she's excellent at this. I mean, she will sit in here at night sometimes and just on the computer, and, because again, they got their search set up to 2,500 square feet max. Well, you go up to 25, and here's 3 more homes that come up and whatever. And she'll look through those, and she will, kind of like Kathy, she'll handpick some things. Hey, I saw this, whatever, let me know if you want to go take a look at this one, different things. I think too, along the way, as you're out there with the buyers and you're spending time with them, be listening for things. There's go back to Jennifer's question, like there's so many things that you could just throw out that have nothing to do with the house, but it's just that relationship that you're building. Graduation time, hey, just thinking about you this weekend. I hope you had a great graduation, your son, whatever. And just those little things like that along the way, you're hearing life things along the way. And just that relationship piece, when I have my traditional team, the thing I really push with my agents, is just, the goal is not to get to closing to get the check. The goal is to get to closing to get referrals. The goal is you'll get paid. The goal is to get to closing that you did such a great job for them that they're just singing your praises, and they can't help but send more people your way, because it wasn't about just going there to get the money. And we can get desperate sometimes in a market like this where, man, we need the money. Don't let that be the driving force, because they'll feel that, they'll sense that, and man, we can just be about what's best for them and building that relationship along the way, man. You've got a client for life now. Every home they're going to buy. So
Yeah, I
just
think
put the
that's great.
people first, the money flows. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, how many of us got into real estate? And if somebody said, did you get into real estate to make money or to help people? We would say help people. But then we put all these stipulations around, well, I'm willing to help them, but only if they're pre-approved with my lender, and only if it's above this amount, and it's within this many miles from my house, and the wind's not blowing that day, and it's not too hot, and it's not too cold, right? Like, that's how I feel sometimes talking to real estate agents, is they have so many disqualifiers. And I'm like, well, are you in this to help people or not? Sometimes we just have to quit worrying about ourselves and just help people at all costs. And you'd be surprised what comes back to you.
Yeah, so true. Any other final questions? Again, thank you, Donnie. This was fantastic. So good.
Quick comment. Don't tell them their kids are ugly.
I was just making sure y'all were awake.
Those
some ugly kids you got there, but hey, no, I'm just kidding.
But hey, I'm the best realtor for you.
Made me laugh.
Yeah, that's all. That was awesome. Every kid is adorable.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have a final question? We're a couple minutes past. Want to respect Donnie and his time. All right. Well, we'll have this recording up. And Donnie, if you wouldn't mind sharing your slides, we'll attach it to the recording. And then we'll make sure you get a copy of the recording for yourself. And again, thank you so much. I know you're super, super busy, just to be able to, be willing to come and pour into the Freedom Team here. Very grateful.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All
Thanks,
right.
Donnie. Hey, real quick, guys, tomorrow, same time, same Zoom link, just our Wednesday mastermind collaboration. Come join us. Okay, those have been awesome. The more people on there, the better, the more stuff to talk about. So that's tomorrow. And then next Tuesday, we're back, first Tuesday of June. We're starting our monthly AI update. So it's all going to be AI next Tuesday. We're going to do that next week. It's going to be awesome as well. So anyway.
So actually, let me say, Donnie, like for the next few weeks, the first Tuesday of every month, we're going to have specific AI training. We've got Nick Krim coming on, who has done a lot in the AI world. He's really taken hold of that from the very beginning when it all started. So you or your team are willing to plug in, or share the recordings with them. Like, obviously that's a big thing. I'm sure you're doing training yourself on that, but Nick and his group have really kind of taken that whole avenue by storm. And so we'll be having a lot of good trainings on that for the first Tuesday of the next several months.
Awesome. Very cool.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. The recording will be up in a little bit. See you guys.
Bye, y'all. Bye-bye.